Good morning, everybody. Today, more of your fellow students will share their stories about what they were able to do last summer with the Poole, Page, and Hatfield grant. Each experience is different, but they're all similar because they were made possible by three remarkable people, Robert Poole, Meg Page, and William Hatfield. And all three of these people really believed profoundly in our motto of not to be served, but to serve. So I hope that you enjoy these presentations and apply for a Poole, or Page, or Hatfield grant.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jasmine Mendoza. I'm a junior, and last spring I was given the honor of receiving the Meg Page Fellowship Grant, which I used to work with the Jamaica Association of the Deaf, also known as the JAD in Portland, Jamaica, in June. So before I learned to speak, my parents taught me to sign. Granted, they were basic signs, but still a form of communication. Growing up, I always wondered how students whose only form of communication it is lived and learned, which brought me to do research on deaf education and landed me a position as a teacher's assistant in a JAD school. I stayed in the town of Port Antonio in a homestay with a retired couple in their Trinity villa, and would cram into a 5-seat taxi with an average of 7 other people every day to get to school, where I stayed for 7 hours. There were 7 students enrolled at the Port Antonio unit, but only 5 of them came to school on a regular basis. I mostly worked with 3 of the elementary level kids. After helping the kitchen aide make lunch in the mornings, the faculty and students and I would engage in conversations in sign while waiting for the rest to arrive. Later in the morning, we would work on maths and after snack time, reading and writing. Andrew in the red is the oldest. He's in the 5th grade, and his favorite subject is reading because it's what he's best at. His sign name is an A on his chin because when he was younger, he would constantly move his chin up and down, trying to imitate the people he saw speak. Deland in the brown is Andrew's best friend and in the 4th grade. He travels an hour and a half on a bus and a taxi to get to school every day. Of the 3, he jokes around the most and likes snack and lunch times the best because that's when he can go outside and play with the kids from the neighboring School of Hope. His sign name is a D that goes from his right cheek to his left because of his laugh. Ricane in the center is in the 1st grade and the only girl at the school. She prefers group read-alouds because she doesn't know enough signs to read aloud on her own, and she learns by observing everyone else. We also made a number and alphabet game so she can practice their order. Her sign name is a rotating R because of her mood swings. My American sign name is just a J, but when the kids first learned this, they all giggled and made fun of me because in Jamaican sign, this can mean juice or garbage. Contrary to popular belief, each country does have its own sign language. I mostly know American Sign, which is similar to Jamaican Sign. While at the JAD, I learned that most of the kids became deaf because of an illness. They were usually the only deaf people in their families, which is why providing a space where they can interact with other deaf kids and learn sign language is so important. I encourage you to think about what is important to you and who you are, and to consider how you can combine that with a volunteer experience to make even the smallest of an impact on someone else's life, and even your own. If you have any questions about anything at all, feel free to stop me in the halls or send me an email. Lastly, I would like to thank the Page family, the grant committee, and Mrs. Frew for adding 3 more reasons to the list of why I sign.
Hi. My name is Osi. I'm a junior here, and I had the chance to use my Poole grant over this summer and go and make a difference in the capital of Nepal, Kathmandu. When I started to look for a program, I already knew that I want to work with people, but I've never been on a service trip so far away from home. So I didn't know what to expect. I was super excited and extremely scared. I went there for a program called Women Empowerment. I knew that I will teach English and take care of kids, but I didn't know how exactly will that work. I mean, who am I supposed to empower if I am just a high school student? After I arrived to the center of our program, I met with people from Spain, Mexico, Belgium, and many other places. Those were the people who I was living for next 2 weeks and whom I became really close to. We worked on my schedule and went over the rules. I went to the women's school in the morning and worked with 2 groups of people with a short break in between. Afternoons, I found myself helping in the children's orphanage. But honestly, it was not at all how I expected it to be. The April 2015 Nepal earthquake killed nearly 9,000 people and injured nearly 22,000 of them. Obviously, it left a huge impact on its society, which still remains a very traditional one. Its economy is largely based on tourism, but to be able to be actually a part of this market, you need to speak English. So all the women whom I thought had one thing in common, a desire to better their lives. They were different in so many ways. The youngest one was 15 and the oldest was 35. Their attitudes, command of English, backgrounds, or even religions were different. Some of them did not know English or alphabet to begin with, so we started from ABC. Some of them knew English pretty well, so I talked with them about their lives, dreams, and their rights. One of them is actually about to take TOEFL, Test of English as a Foreign Language. Her dream is to study in US, so I tried to prepare her for it. Fingers crossed she'll soon pass it. Honestly, it was so weird knowing that in some ways I could be an inspiration for someone that is so much older than I am. They were all so kind and warm. And these are the kids from the shelter. Believe me, I have never seen a group of such an amazing human beings. Many of them lost their parents in the earthquake, but some of them were just left behind. Either their parents got injured and were no longer able to take care of them, or the kids were abandoned since they were disabled and unable to have helped out in the day-to-day struggle to get some money and buy some food. And still, they were so positive. Sometimes I feel like they taught me more than I taught them. Even though it all may seem like I had no free time, luckily I had enough to meet up with Cho, who sits just there behind me on school assemblies, her younger sister Kanchak, who is a sophomore at Taft, and their family. I had one-in-a-lifetime chance to see the temple run by their dad. Service trips like that are amazing because you get to work with people with different perspectives and get a deeper understanding of their culture and values. Jo showed me around her favorite places. Seeing Nepal from locals' perspectives was amazing. And amazing is also the fact how much cheaper everything is when you walk with someone who actually speaks Nepalese. So yeah, although I did not see yet in the Himalayas and I got one-day food poisoning, it was super worth it. Yeah, it still was worth it. It totally changed my perception on things that we get for granted. So for this experience, I would like to thank the Poole family, the Grants Committee, Mrs. Fru, Cho Kanchak, and their fantastic family, as well as everyone whom I didn't mention, but who somehow helped me for my journey. I am extremely lucky to do weird things like making new friends with people from Nepal. I still keep in touch with many people who are part of my program, and girls who I taught English. If anyone has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer. Stop me in the hallway or send me an email. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Dal. My name is Aditya Valsikar. I'm a four-year senior. And this summer, with the help of the Hatfield grant, I had the experience of visiting Igiage. Oops. Oh, there we go. It's a town of only 50 residents, and it's directly on the shores of Lake Iliamna, which I'm standing right in front of here. So some of you probably don't know her, but a senior from last year, Lauren Fadiman, also visited Igiugig. And after hearing her speak so fondly about her experience there, I decided I'd wanted to visit as well. So in August, I boarded a flight from Chicago to Anchorage, and from there, I boarded this bush plane. Low-key looks like the wing isn't attached properly, but I made it anyway, so that's good. After a journey of around 10 hours, I found myself here in the Alaskan wilderness. Now, this is the first sight I saw when I entered the village's guest house, where I would be staying. It was my first introduction to the rugged terrain I was about to immerse myself in. Now, I know you could probably guess which pair was mine. There's some savage slippers there, some boots, and then, yep, I traversed the Alaskan tundra with my Nike Air Force Ones. I don't know why I brought them. I guess I have a natural swagger of sorts. Those shoes didn't make it to the end of the journey, but the cultural experience I gained from visiting Igiugig made up for that loss tenfold. Moving on. So the primary focus of my visit was to learn more about Lake Iliamna Yupik, which is Igiugig's traditional language. It's a specific dialect of the broader Yupik language, and unfortunately it's been in decline over the past couple of years. In fact, unfortunately, there are only 10 remaining speakers of fluent speakers of the language, and that's kind of why the village has made a push to convert all the signage to the language in order to kind of revive it. And also, as a part of my work there, I was able to shadow these master apprentice sessions. As you can see in this picture, adults in the village would gather for lunch every day to practice using Yupik together in kind of an immersive environment. For example, they would practice referring to each ingredient and narrate the action of making a sandwich, all in Yupik. And I remember watching this room brighten up with Yupik mythology and stirring depictions of bear encounters, which was cool. And yes, I mean 2,000-pound Kodiak bears. So that was pretty scary. There are apparently some of those around there. So another culminating part of the experience was getting to partake in some of Igiugig's farming initiatives and sustainability projects. For example, I learned a great deal about how the village is trying to use these horizontal wind turbines, which are over there, to generate sustainable electricity, eco-friendly greenhouses to maintain a thriving garden year-round, even in the cold. And of course, there were a lot of other fun things to do in Igiugig, boating, hanging out with kids. Chickens to feed, berries to pick, and of course, last but not least, a personal favorite of mine and a necessity for any excursion, an absolutely killer Snapchat filter. So Igiugig has taught me so much about the importance of preserving language and culture, as well as protecting our environment. So I'd sincerely like to thank the Hatfield family, the grant committee, and Mrs. Frew for this opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, Lauren and I have kind of built a Taft Igiugig connection, and I really hope that one of you will build on that foundation in the coming months. So feel free to ask me any questions if you think you might be interested, and thanks for listening.
Hi people, my name is Anna Chigrinsky and I'm a junior. I think dolphins and whales are the cutest and smartest animals, so this summer I want to learn more about them and help them. Through the help of the grant, I was able to do dolphin and whale conservation with an organization called Frontier in Tenerife. Funny story, when I came back to Taft and started talking with Mrs. Frew about my experience with the grant, I found out that another Tafty went to the same program just a week later than I did, and we only learned about that the other person was there when we got back to TAP, so that was pretty weird. Also, I was inspired to go on this trip by a presentation just like this one you're about to hear a year ago, so I urge you to listen because hopefully I'll inspire at least one of you to go on a life-changing trip over this summer. For those of you who might not know where Tenerife is, it is the largest and most populated island of the 7 Canary Islands, where it is really hot over the summer. I stayed in that volunteer house in the southern part of Tenerife. So this is my schedule. As you can see, there's at least one thing to do every day, but it varies from person to person what you have to do. On my first day, I had a lot to learn. First, I learned how to use my camera to make clear pictures of moving objects, such as dolphins with their fins above water. On these photos, you can see my fellow newbies imitating to be dolphins with their fins above water. First, it was really hard to take clear pictures of them, but as you can see, over time, I got better. I needed to learn this because later I would need to use these pictures to identify individual dolphins. And I also need to learn how to crop out these pictures to make the pictures identifiable through the fins and the marks or scars that the dolphins might have on them. A big part of Frontier's mission was to keep track of dolphin and whale population in the area. This is why we needed to learn to recognize the species that we see. Sometimes this was really hard because as those pictures show, you don't always get to see the whole part of the animal. So sometimes you would just have to be able to recognize an animal through like 1 second and then write down what kind of animal it was. Oh no. Well, that's a video of the coastal. On my second day, I went on a coastal trip with all the newbies who arrived in Tenerife when I did. On this day, we had to climb up a mountain for about an hour to get to the top of the cliff where we used our binoculars to spot dolphins and whales. During my time in Tenerife, I didn't only learn about amazing animals, but I met great people as well. During the coastal, we were fighting the heat together, and then we started talking, and we got really close. Actually, a couple weeks ago was our half-a-year friend anniversary, and our Snapchat group blew up because everyone was so excited. And a few of the volunteers are going on another trip together this summer. My favorite time of the trip was when I got on a boat. My boat was a catamaran called Eden. I spent about 3 hours at sea taking notes on interactions with the animals. And I have some of these interactions. I hope they play. Oh no. It was a really cute video with dolphins jumping up. There are like 30 dolphins. Just try to imagine dolphins breaching and you're on a boat and you're like, wow. So that was amazing. I'll send out an email to News because it's really cute. And then this video was supposed to be a huge whale coming up and like blowing water. Just imagine that. Wow. So that was awesome. Just try to imagine it. It's beautiful. On my 4th day, we had a community service day. This day consists of cleaning up the beach, informing tourists about our work and how they can help us, and also an underwater cleanup. On the beach cleanup, we were walking around and picking up trash. There was a lot of trash, which kind of surprised me because this was southern Tenerife's most popular beach. After picking up the trash in the burning sun, we went on an underwater cleanup. We put our snorkels on and swam around to find some plastic bags or cans. Even though we had a strict schedule of things we had to do, we also had a lot of free time when we could just hang out at the beach, go kayaking, or have some amazing seafood meals. I'd like to thank Mrs. Rue, the gang committee, the Poole family, and Frontier for giving me a chance to have this life-changing experience. But lastly, I would like to leave you with one of my main takeaways, which is that if a group of passionate people gather, anything is possible. This is why I want to urge every one of you to do something this summer, because even though you might not change the world overnight, you'll meet amazing people while doing something that you love. Thanks.
Hi guys, my name's Natalie Waldrum, and I'm here to talk to you guys about my experience this summer. So I had the opportunity to go to the Ecuadorian rainforest and a program at Dartmouth through a nonprofit called Sustainable Summer. And so I just wanted to talk to you guys about some of the the notable differences that I found between the culture that we were staying in Ecuador and that of my own. So we stayed in a Quechua community, which is an indigenous community, and one of the big things that they had that we didn't in the U.S. was that they found that nature had a spiritual connection to man. So they believed that if you disrespected Mother Nature or Pachamama, that she can take life away and she can also give life. And an example of this was their way in which they got food. So they used chakras, which are these forest gardens that are in their backyard essentially, and they sustain the life of the community. So they provide all the food that they consume, as well as typically have a source of income. So for the community that we visited, it produced cacao. So they also only take what they need, because if they overexploit this chakra of theirs, they will be unable to survive, because their entire community is reliant off this land. This land is not their own, but it is Mother Nature's, and thus they don't have the right to exploit it or take it. And I found through this experience and seeing how they interact with their land that I feel very disconnected with my food and the products that I consume in general. I don't make my own food. I don't watch my clothes being made. And I think that's just a very important distinction that I learned through this trip. But you might ask, why does this matter? I think it matters because it allows us to forget, and we have the privilege to forget, that we need the earth to survive. We need the earth to give us food, to give us clean air, water, and that allows us to forget our effect of consumption. So we have the privilege to not see our resources being depleted because we're in the United States, where we don't have to farm our land. So that's what I learned in Ecuador, but when I was at Dartmouth, the second half of my program, we talked about how we can actually mend this disconnect between consumption and production in order to create a more sustainable culture that respects the gifts that Mother Nature gives us. And I found that this was a really complex question, because there's really no one answer to this. You can't just say, we need to stop drilling, or we need to make more government regulations, because those are good steps to take towards a more sustainable future, but really I learned that it's consumer driven. So it's our choice every time we buy something at the supermarket, or every time we buy a piece of, like a jacket online, that we're choosing to support industries, and we have also the power to not support those industries that most people are morally opposed to. So I think one of the, but this doesn't really sound easy, right? Like, how can we, even if we try, to understand where our t-shirts come from or where our pants come from? It's really difficult because we don't have much transparency in our businesses. So one of the things that I found really interesting during the Dartmouth program was we learned about these certifications. So I don't know if many of you guys know what B corporations are, but this is just an example of a certification that companies can go through this certification process that lets consumers know that they are committed to upholding standards of social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. And the key part of this is that they actually do it. It's not like a marketing scheme to attract conscious consumers. It's something that they actually are committed to doing. But the difficulty is most businesses aren't transparent in that way. So even if they are doing good, we can't know that as consumers. And so I didn't really give any answers, and I don't really know any answers because it's a really complex question. But at Dartmouth, I had the opportunity to think about those things and learn more about those things, and it really changed my viewpoint on environmentalism and sustainability in general. So I'd like to thank the Hatfield and Poole families, as well as Ms. Frew, for the opportunity to have these incredibly enlightening experiences. And I'm really grateful for that. Yes.
So, you've heard from 5 amazing students about their experiences this summer, and if you have any questions about any of these grants or the application process, you can see me, and have a great day. Think about what you heard.